Welcome to the Easy History Channel. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809 in the state of Kentucky in the family of a poor farmer. From childhood, Abraham was used to hard work, helping his parents cultivate the land, hunting and gathering wild berries. Hard farm life prevented Abraham from receiving even primary education. He himself spoke about it as follows: "It is certain that when I came of age I knew little. However, I read and pondered and wrote, and that was all I could do." Abraham was educated at home. He loved to read. His favorite childhood books were Robinson Crusoe, Aesop's Fables, and History of the United States. Abraham achieved everything in his life by his own efforts. From the age of 21, he took over many professions. He worked as a surveyor, storekeeper, lumberjack, postal clerk, and even fought with Indians. He was also fond of history and philosophy. Lincoln also studied law, hoping to obtain a lawyer's license. He was also successful in sports, namely wrestling. The year 1832 is considered to be the beginning of Lincoln's political career. It was then that Lincoln took part in the elections for the first time. However, he took only 8th place in the elections for the Illinois state legislature. In 1834, he was elected on the list of the Whig Party to the Illinois state legislature. There he learned the perfection of political affairs, gaining authority among his colleagues. In 1836, Lincoln passed the exam and received the right to practice law. After becoming a lawyer, he moved to the city of Springfield, Illinois. Lincoln began to earn well for the first time in his life. Every spring and fall, he traveled hundreds of miles on horseback or in a buggy across sparsely populated prairies from one village to another, sorting out farmers' claims. Most of the cases were small, and the fees for them were insignificant. With deep knowledge of jurisprudence and selflessness, Lincoln achieved popularity in the state of Illinois. The next step in Abraham Lincoln's political career was his election to the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress in 1847. Work in Congress opened the opportunity to apply for a place in the country's government. However, Lincoln made many political enemies by opposing American aggression in Mexico and the president's policy. James Polk. When his term in the House of Representatives expired in 1849, he did not even attempt to run again. Returning from the Congress home to Springfield, Illinois, marked the beginning of the worst period in Lincoln's life. He lost political popularity, his law practice was significantly reduced, large debts appeared. But over the next 3 or 4 years, thanks to perseverance and knowledge, Lincoln managed to become a leading lawyer in the state of Illinois. When he took on this or that case, he always sought a thorough investigation, knew the laws related to the case in detail, knew how to overcome all formalities and get to the bottom of the matter. Traveling around the judicial district, he regained his former popularity. In January 1849, Abraham Lincoln introduced a bill to Congress to prohibit slavery in the Federal District of Columbia. The amendment was rejected, although the position as a whole was extremely moderate. The abolition of slavery in the U.S. Capitol did not mean its final destruction and was important. Rather, from a moral and ethical point of view, the capital of a state that claimed primacy on the American continent was to be inhabited by free people. The first unsuccessful attempt by forces in Congress did not force Lincoln to give up political activity. He was not at all going to limit himself to the work of a lawyer and joined the Republican Party formed on February 25, 1854. At that time, the political struggle within the United States revolved around the question of unclaimed lands in the west of the country and territories taken from other countries. The southern states, where the plantation slave economy flourished, wanted to spread slavery to the new territories of the northern states, where there was no slavery at the time, and believed that these lands should go to free farmers and the industrial bourgeoisie. Political and social organizations that opposed slavery formed the Republican Party in 1854, one of the founders of which was Abraham Lincoln. In May 1860, the Republican Party decided to nominate Abraham Lincoln as a candidate for the presidency of the United States. On November 6, 1860, he won by almost 500,000 votes. The victory of the candidate of the Republican Party, Abraham Lincoln, in the presidential elections of 1860 became a danger signal for the slave owners and led to secession, leaving the Union. On December 20, 1860, South Carolina set the example, followed by Mississippi, January 9, 1861, Florida, January 10, 1861, Alabama, January 11, 1861, Georgia, January 19, 1861, Louisiana, January 26, 1861. The president's political enemies seceded from the country, creating the Confederacy of Southern Slave States. 11 states adopted the Constitution and elected former Mississippi Senator Jefferson Davis as their president, who, along with other leaders of the country, declared that slavery would exist, forever, in their territories. The Alabama city of Montgomery became the capital of the Confederacy, and after the annexation of Virginia, Richmond. These states occupied 40% of the entire U.S. territory with a population of 9.1 million people, including more than 3.6 million blacks. On October 7, the Indian Territory, whose population was loyal neither to the Confederacy nor to the U.S. government, joined the Confederacy. 23 states remained in the Union, including slave-owning Delaware, Kentucky, Missouri, and Maryland, which not without a struggle remained loyal to the federal Union. The population of the Union exceeded 22 million people, almost all of the country's industry, 70% of railways, 81% of bank deposits were located on its territory. The Civil War of 1861–65 began in the country. On November 8, 1864, Lincoln was elected President of the United States for the second time. He won over General McClellan with a difference of 10%. Lincoln directed military actions and in every possible way contributed to the victory over the rebel states. The northern states led by Lincoln won, and the country was saved from disintegration. Lincoln advocated the abolition of revenge against the defeated Confederates, but fulfilled his intentions and abolished slavery throughout the country. The number of his political enemies increased again. In the southern states, they even erected a monument to the Confederate General Robert E. Lee, who lost the war. During the years of Lincoln's presidency, a transcontinental railroad was built, which more closely connected the East and the then Wild West of the United States. The land issue was also resolved. Lincoln advocated the introduction of African Americans into modern society, which many perceived as bold and revolutionary. The U.S. has been solving this problem for decades already after the assassination of the 16th president. Abraham Lincoln died at the hands of John Wilkes Booth, an actor who was an ardent supporter of the Confederacy. Initially, Booth planned to kidnap Lincoln, hoping to exchange him for Confederate prisoners. On April 11, 1865, he listened to the president's speech in which he announced the granting of voting rights to African Americans, and, outraged, changed his plans. After learning that the First Lady would come to the performance at Ford's Theater, he carefully planned the operation. His followers were to kill Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward. Lincoln arrived at the theater to see the play Our American Cousin on April 14, 1865, without his bodyguard Ward Lemon. The president occupied the state box. Booth crept up the back and waited for what he thought was the funniest line in the play, hoping the laughter would drown out the sound of the shot. When the laughter started, Booth jumped into the box and shot himself in the head at close range. Major Rathbone immediately grappled with him, but Booth wounded him with a knife. The assassin leaped onto the stage and shouted, "Sic semper tyrannis." In Latin, thus always with tyrants. He managed to escape, despite the fact that he broke his leg jumping from the bed. He was captured 12 days later in Virginia, wounded in the capture. He soon died of his wounds. On April 15, at 7:22 a.m., the president was declared dead. Lincoln's body was taken in a funeral procession through the territory of several states to Illinois. He was buried in Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, with a 54-meter high grave over him. By 1874, several bronze monuments to the president were erected on the grave. In order to prevent the body from being stolen for ransom, in 1901 the body was exhumed and reburied in a concrete block. The Civil War was the bloodiest military conflict in the history of the United States and the most difficult test for American democracy. Abraham Lincoln became a central historical figure in the consciousness of the American people, a person who prevented the disintegration of the United States and who made a significant contribution to the formation of the American nation and the abolition of slavery as the main obstacle to the further normal development of the country. Lincoln initiated the modernization of the South, the emancipation of slaves. He is responsible for the formulation of the main goal of democracy, government created by the people, from the people and for the people. During his presidency, the Transcontinental Railroad to the Pacific Ocean was also laid, the infrastructure system was expanded, a new banking system was created, and the agrarian problem was solved. To this day, Abraham Lincoln is considered one of the most intellectual presidents of the United States. As a sign of gratitude of the American people, a memorial was erected in Washington to the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln, as one of the 4 presidents who determined the historical development of the United States of America. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, like, and don't forget to leave a comment.